Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Lantuh. I'm here to talk to you about exposure management and a solution that we have and how it applies to the market and the industry. And what we're really going to discuss here is we're going to really talk about how to optimize an organization's defenses against the threats that are targeting you specifically. We're a part of UST, so I've been doing startups for the last 35 years. I was running my own company until we sold it to Cyberproof, which is a division of UST, in December. And I've been doing this. I'd started out back in the mid-2000s. I'd founded a company called NetWitness, where we commercialized some technology out of the NSA and brought it to market and sold it off to EMC, and did the same thing with a company called eCentire in the managed detection and response space. And sold that off to Warburg Pincus. And then when I was doing a turnaround for private equity at a company called Fidelis, I met my co-founders. And we decided that what was needed for the market was something that connected all the disparate tooling in your environment and focused it in on prioritized threats. So that's kind of how we came about this. And it's just a need that everybody has. It's something that we're really excited about. This is kind of a smattering of type of customers that we've got from a cybersecurity standpoint across all industries. And then what we've done in coming together with Cyberproof is really important, is that we brought a technology that helps to optimize defenses against the threats targeting you, but it also marries it together with the various cybersecurity type of services that are needed in order to do this holistically and in a proper manner. And so the problem that we're really addressing is that organizations really lack an automated and continuous way to go about and understand what threats are targeting you, how well your defenses are aligned in order to be able to defend yourself, and how relevant are the controls and detections that are in place currently. So we're answering the key questions of, where are the threats that I need to really concern myself about as it pertains to my business? How are those threats actually aligned to my defensive capabilities in the environment and what the attack surface actually does look like? And then what are the gaps in my defenses that are either misconfigurations or tool deficiencies or true gaps in the defenses that you need to fix, and how do we prioritize these fixes? So what we need is really a holistic approach, right, to align all these things. And that holistic approach, it combines together the tooling that's in your environment, that's unique to your environment, with the set of threats that are targeting your environment based on your profile. So we take a look at, an industry, the size, the types of data sets that you have in your environment, the types of systems that you're running, and then we determine out of all the threats that are out there exactly who's targeting you, right? And by doing that, we can then hot wash the environment to be able to understand where the holes are and where the gaps are in doing this. And so what we do is we go out and we connect into the sensors so that we help you focus all the resources in and be able to position yourself against really defending the environment and understanding the spend that you've got and really addressing that. The three key pillars that we use and we look at here are threat exposure, attack surface, and defense surface. Now, from a threat exposure standpoint, it's really, as I said earlier, it's really understanding the threats that are unique to your organization based on your profile. And once we build that profile, we can now go and prioritize the threats that are there that are targeting your organization and map that up against MITRE ATT&CK, and then take a look at the second pillar, which is the attack surface, so that we can then go in and discover, what security tools you have, what detection logic, they're providing, and then determine where you've got gaps and you're exposed from a threat perspective that's targeting you. And then the defense surface side is really aggregating together all the defensive capabilities that you have. So we go in and look at all the log collection, all the detection logic you have, all the controls, and marry that together. So these three pillars are, how we look at the world in terms of being able to take and aggregate all of the capabilities in your environment, bring it together into one location, and be able to analyze it properly. And the way that we look at the world is that, you connect into the customer environment and you think about the various security tooling that's in place. So minimally, we want to take a look at what the EDR has available, what the SIM and data lake has available, what the vuln scanner has available. If there's network sensing or cloud sensing or email sensing, that's even better, right? We'll consider all that and take all that in. But once we build that threat profile, and then we understand exactly the threats that are targeting the organization, and we wire into the tooling to understand what the defensive capabilities are in the environment, we mix that together with the asset data available and the identity associated with that asset that comes off of the scanners that are doing vulnerability. And then we run an analytic, and that analytic pulls together all these disparate data sources, and it combines the threat data with your defensive tooling, with the vulnerability data, with your asset data, with your identity data, and then out comes a list of recommended prioritized actions on what you need to do from a defensive standpoint to protect yourself against those targeted threats. And this is the foundation of our patents. So we came out with 3 patents. The first ones came out before Gartner even talked about continuous threat exposure management. And really what it is we look at the world as a set of relationships. And it's really the relationships between elements of threat and elements of defense. And once you build the threat profile, this becomes super applicable to every environment. Because when we build that threat profile, we go, okay, what's the organization look like? What industry are you in? What various geographic areas do you function in? Give me the systems that you're running. Give me the data types that you need to protect. And then we build a threat profile. So you're not trying to boil the ocean. You get all this threat intelligence that comes at you, but in order to prioritize that threat intelligence, you have to understand your environment and what threat actors would like to care about you the most and why. And once we prioritize that, now we can go and say, great, got it. Here are all the threat actors. Here are the threat actors that care about us. Here are the threat actors that actually have campaigns that are running today that are relevant. And based on those campaigns, we understand the malware tools that are there. We understand the TTPs that are being exploited. We understand the CVEs that are being exploited. Great, we understand the threat actors now. Now we go in and we say, we're going to relate that back. So here are the CVEs that from all of the threat actors that are out there, here's a specific set of threat actors targeting me with their specific set of CVEs, and I know I'm susceptible in my asset base to these CVEs. So now I understand that. Now we attach identities to that, and everybody else now in the room understands, okay, now that's a patching process. But we take it a step further. We back out of that, and in relation to doing that process that everyone understands of vulnerability management, we back out to the TTPs associated with that CVE, and we say, okay, what do we do to protect the attack paths now? How do we protect the tooling? What do we have in the tooling that helps us protect? So we go in and in aggregate, we look at all of the available detection logic that you have. We look at all the available logging that you have, and we look at all the available controls that you have. And then we say, okay, how is it set up? So now we can say, to counteract the TTPs, we need to turn on this visibility in these various sensors or areas of the network. We need to write these detection logics. If you don't have the detection logic, we give you reference detection logic. And we need to set these controls that aren't set properly, right? So this is the way we do security. And we do it based on this. We connect into your infrastructure. We pull in 50 sources of threat intelligence. We connect into 51 sources of data that's in your network. And we take in the vuln scan data. Cybersecurity today is not faced with a lack of data problem. We got enough data. We got great data. We got great metadata. We got great analytics. What we're missing is the correlation and the ability to pull it all together into something meaningful and actionable and pointed and directed towards what actually needs to do, what an organization needs to do in order to further their security posture. Couple of examples I'll give you, and some of these focus more on just the concept of defensive readiness, and I'm sure that a lot of you have this issue where the CEO or the board or the CIO puts a call down and says, hey, how are we doing against the latest threat that's out there? So we had this with one of our large insurance companies, global insurance company, 80 operating companies around the world. You can imagine the various threat profiles that are associated with each one of those individual entities. And they had a very close brush with MOVEit 2 summers ago now. And that's when we were just doing the POC with them. And so they accelerated the acquisition of what we do. And that readiness process, their global threat intel team, it took them 6 weeks to determine if the environment was protected properly against MOVEit. Very manual process, having to go out with spreadsheets to all the actual sensors that they have, correlating that to the threat, understanding where the overlap is, understanding what detection logic, understanding where the controls were, all manual process. Over this Christmas holiday, they had a close brush with CLOP. And when they came back to us, I got a call from the head of threat intel, and he said, Nick, that same process took us 3 minutes when we were wired in with the system. So they were able to go through and use all the analytics and be able to come back in a very rapid manner, and not have the headache and the fire drill that took weeks to accomplish. Another scenario we have is a large military shipbuilding defense system organization. And they had a really sophisticated process where when they got their feeds down from the intelligence community on a daily basis in the mornings, it'd take them 4 hours a day to determine threat readiness, right? Same use case. With us, that's a 2 to 3 minute process, no different than the insurance company. And then we've been put into other organizations that have sophisticated teams. They've put us in to almost act as the threat intel fusion capability in that organization. So, we've been able to scrape budget away from actual bodies that are trying to do this by burning calories, which isn't necessarily a fun thing to do because it's all point in time versus having a continuous and automated as you go. And then this kind of just pulls it all together. Sort of the ability to do exposure management in a way where you align not only from a tooling standpoint and an automation standpoint, all of the capabilities that are in the tools, but then having the vast amount of services around it that complement this. So think of CTI, think of threat hunting, think of detection engineering, think of log engineering. All the things that you have to do in order to keep your system healthy and maintained, properly to defend against the threats that are targeting you. And that's really it. Kind of short and sweet. I'd like to open it up for questions. I don't know how many of you are concerned about exposure management, or if you've heard about it, but would be willing to answer 2 minutes worth of questions.
Hazel was in a very fortunate position. She went well over time. She was given extra time. You have 2.
Okay, that's fine. 2 minutes is fine. Any questions? Yes. Yeah, so what you're asking is how do we focus? We focus in by going out to all the, CISA puts out reports. There's breach reports, there's vendor reports, there's threat reports that come out. We take and ingest all of those threat reports and we parse everything out that the threat report has, right? So we parse out who they're targeting, what CVEs are associated with it, what TTPs are associated with it, what geographic regions they target, what industries they target, et cetera. And once we parse all that out, now it's all automated. So now we know all of the threat reports that are out there that have been parsed. And now we can say, when we build a threat profile in an organization, now with 100% certainty, we can say these threat actors that are out in the wild are the only ones that you really need to worry about because they're the ones targeting your type of organization, your type of industry, your size, your specific systems, and the specific data types that you own, right? So once we do that, and we do that for every customer, right? So then you're not having to boil the ocean on trying to figure out which threats are most important and which threat reports you should pay attention to and where you put the human calorie effort. That happens automatically. When we build a threat profile, we parse out all that information and we say, out of these 1,000 threat actors, these are the 15 that matter to you right now. And then we adjust and we prioritize and we recommend what you need to do from a defensive tooling standpoint to counter that. Not only the CVE, but to counter the TTPs and protect the attack path in multiple locations. Does that answer your question? Well, I mean, you saw some of our customers, right? So every one of those customers is an example of doing this. Yes?
Yeah, we have ACT, the Market Research Agency. We use share farm to share sensitive farms with clients, how would you go about assessing the secureness of a third-party outfit like share farm?
Yeah, supply chain is a very big concern, and we would actually have to do, and we're doing this with some of our customers where they're wanting us to protect the supply chain as well, and so we need to go into the supply chain and do the same inside their organization, be able to protect them and provide this capability downstream. But you're right, you could be well protected, and there's a way in through a supply chain because now that traffic looks normal, right? It's got credentials, and it's acting like a normal user on the network would act. But we've been asked that, but we would have to go into those organizations, and we're actually doing some of this for several of our customers where we're working on some additional intellectual property to address that in a third-party risk management perspective.
So I can't do any more questions here, because we are going for a break, but Cyberproof are in the exhibitor hall. And you're going to be there, Nick?
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you, Nick. I'm sorry we couldn't get to your questions.